So I think when people hear that, right, where you're going to take the Time 100 and you're going to put it on television, talk through a little bit how you think about a startup or an incumbent who couldn't, have that conversation, strike a deal like that. They would say, oh, if we want to do something, we're just going to stream it on the internet. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of one option. The second is on television. And so is it a attraction because of the audience size? Is it an attraction because of the partner? Like why go to television versus digital? I think it's a prime example of these situations.
So we do a lot of digital distribution and we have a lot of success. We do the Time 100 Talks, which we launched in Q2, not as a virtual event, as a television show. We do it every week. And every week, hundreds of thousands of people actually tune in to watch it. And then ultimately, it gets clipped and it gets millions of views as we put it through our ecosystem. The ability to get quickly into the network world is no matter how much it's transitioning today, it's still gigantic, right, on every level. And it's still where a lot of eyeballs are today on every level. And so there is a prestige to being able to do something of that. I think that what a lot of people tend to say when they look at sort of evolution is forget targeting this person. Let's target this audience. Like this is useless, or this was the old, let's go to the new. And I'm simply saying, like, you can't discount anything. Like half of the Time 100 this year is going to be digitized, right? And it's going to be streamed over our own site and over Twitter and through those feeds. And a portion of it is going to be broadcast, right? And I don't think like a brand like ours should ever say either or, like we should play in all the different areas. I learned quickly when I was at Wired, a really interesting reality of getting talent to speak at events. And I remember we had Chris Sacca at the Wired Business Conference. God, I want to say maybe in 2010. I might be wrong on the year. But he made a comment to us, to Maya Drazen, who's now with me at Time. She's amazing. But he made a comment about he didn't come and speak to the Wired Business Conference for the 400 people that were in the room, right? Like there were great 400 people that we curated. He spoke at the Wired Business Conference for the distribution that the Wired brand gave him to the entire ecosystem that was outside of the room. And I think that to any small brand, like what you want to think about is like there's one value to speaking to your audience, but if you don't have the distribution to push it out, there's only so much influence and impact that you can ultimately have. And, like I do think that there's huge value. We take the Time 100 Talks, and not only do we stream it on our site, but we stream it live over Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, right? 3 very big communities for us. So that way we're maximizing what that reach is digitally.
Speaking of digitally, Time is already going through this transition. You have drastically grown the digital revenue. Is there a world where it is 100% digital, right? And kind of you do all the things that you do today, just bigger, badder, there's more revenue channels, but the legacy stuff kind of just erodes away, not because you guys want it to, but just that the trends force that to happen?
I don't know. I mean, here's what I would say is, as it relates to marketing revenue, Time is never going to be anything less than a digital first marketing revenue sort of organization. However, print is still a very large consumer revenue base for us. And, what was interesting and what we found was we had our internal projections as to what we could do as it relates to print revenue. And in Q2, and we grew print revenue 6% against the projections that we had. So like in the most challenging quarter, we found that there still was a large consumer demand for print. And, what I would say is this. Think about horses for a second. I bet you never thought you'd talk about horses on this podcast, right? But like back prior to trains or cars, right? Like horses were mass transportation, right? Like if you think about, did you ever play the Oregon Trail game, like growing up? Like how'd they get across the country? Horses, right? But then trains came around. And what happened to trains? What happened to the horses when trains came around? They became local transportation, right? And then cars came around. And what happened to the horses? They didn't go extinct. They just came relegated to two very specific niche audiences. Gamblers, right? If you didn't see that one coming. And the affluent, right? Collectors. And I think that print is going to fall along that same spectrum. Like, I don't think in my lifetime or in your lifetime, print is going to disappear. But I do think that the value proposition that it provides is going to get continuously defined by the audience that it wants. And then all print products are going to have to choose, are you delivering what the expectation is of that audience? And so, like in the case of Time, if you look at it, like the value proposition of Time is it sort of captures living history in the moment, right? Like the magazine has gotten rid of and shed certain things that historically that the internet has essentially replaced, right? And it goes to bigger thought leader pieces. It goes to bigger sort of contextual pieces. The goal of print is to seed the ongoing conversation of the internet, not to compete with it, right? And then ultimately, like if you look, and you'll see very subtle cues with it, like we're slowly like, we increase the paper stock, right? Make it a slightly better product, right? Like, and you think about it from that perspective. And so I think, again, that the people who think that like, oh, print is dead, well, yes, in the marketing sense, print is seeing the floor drop very quickly. There's still business there, right? But like from the consumer front, there's still a very strong consumer business that's existing.